Hey guys, today's story is about, a lot of ogres. So, this story is an epic win for the players, and a true horror story involving the DM's reaction to it. It was during my college 2nd edition AD&D campaign. I was a lawful good paladin, and the rest of the party were spellcasters and a rogue. The party was traveling deep into evil territory inside of a mountain that was inhabited by every foul creature that you could imagine. We were there to get my +5 Holy Avenger, and the DM was a devout Christian who liked to confuse his religious beliefs and the game's concept of morality, and how lawful good should be played. Let's just say that he had direct ideas about what choices my paladin should make, and was often annoyed when I found other lawful good workarounds that involved mainly finding excuses to smite the evildoers. The party found themselves on top of a ledge, looking down at a huge cavern filled with over 5,000 ogres. Yep, that's right, 5,000 ogres it was. And they were getting ready in a long ceremony to sacrifice a human female right before our eyes. Now, I'm not sure what the DM intended, but I instantly, and without hesitation, looked at the rest of the party and said, "Hey guys, let's go kill the ogres." To which their obvious reaction was laughter.
Are you insane? There's 5,000 of them!
Now, here's what was going through my mind. First, we were around level 8 around that time, and my character wasn't too bright. Everything was black and white for him, and the only way that he could save the damsel in distress in his mind was to go down there and start chopping away until all of the ogres between him and the girl were dead. But the wizard in our group had a spell touch ability where he could imbue inanimate objects with spells. But it took some convincing to get the party to go for it, and this was my argument. Alright guys, each ogre is worth 270 experience each, which equates to about 1.3 mil for us all to divide between. And wizard, you have that spell touch ability, so you can touch a bunch of pebbles with fireball, and everyone can just start flinging pebbles down on their heads from up here. Also, my paladin has red dragon armor, so he can run down there through the explosions and throw himself on top of the maiden to protect her from the blasts. It'll be like shooting fish in a barrel. Okay, so I immediately don't like the fact that his argument is for the experience. Not, okay, I'm a paladin, I need to save the damsel in distress. No, it's,
but we'll all get a lot of experience for it.
I don't like that. Another thing being is, what kind of crap-ass homebrew did the DM allow with the wizards? There's a reason why such a thing doesn't exist in native D&D. But not only that, but the fact that they can apparently enchant enough pebbles to eradicate 5,000 ogres. Even being generous, a wizard cannot have that many fireballs. Being as generous as I bloody well can be, a wizard at level 20 will have 4 level 3 spell slots as well as 4 spells per day in level 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9th level spells, which altogether would be about 28 spells. And then being even more generous, assuming that the wizard has 40 or higher intelligence, then he would have an extra 4 level 3 spells per day, 3 level 4, 5, 6, and 7th level spells per day, as well as 2 level 8 and 9 spells per day, which altogether would be an extra 20 for a total of 48. So even with 48 fireballs, and assuming that the fireballs are thrown in an ideal configuration to maximize the area hit by this carpet bombing, with a radius of 20 feet per fireball, each fireball should hit between 16 to 19 ogres, assuming they're all standing in close quarters and in the best potential positioning to maximize damage. This is also assuming that all those fireballs are immediately lethal, as a fireball is a 1d6 per caster level up to level 10 for a maximum of 10d6. So you should have the potential of doing up to 60 damage on an ogre, whereas an ogre should have about 30 HP on average. which means that you can definitely still fail to kill an ogre in one shot. We're also not taking into account that 5,000 ogres standing side by side would require a cavern with more than 50,000 square footage of space, as ogres are large creatures, which is absolutely gigantic. And with 48 fireballs, which each cover a radius of 20 feet, which equates roughly to 1,100 square feet being covered in fire per ball, as a fireball hits 44 squares, and with each square being a 5x5 grid, that means 25 square feet per square. Which, with 48 fireballs, that equates to it covering approximately 52,800 feet. Which means that anywhere between 768 and 912 ogres are hit. Which, even under all of these ideal circumstances, would still only result in less than a fifth of the ogres being wiped out. So the only way that we could potentially do this, even with all this hand-waving and generosity, is if we were to squeeze the ogres into a 5x5 space, as opposed to a 10x10 because they aren't in combat. In which case, each fireball could hit up to 44 ogres, which means that with 48 fireballs, 2,112 of them could potentially be dead. But all this is moot because they're level 8, so they should have about 5 fireballs per day, not including the int mod. Anyway, at this point, the DM who never considered for a moment that anyone would ever try to attack 5,000 ogres started to get a bit aggravated, trying to dissuade us from attacking. But the 1.3 million experience had the party hooked. The whole party was excited, and we started planning our nuke of the ogre cavern. We sat for an hour going over every contingency in case the DM tried to be heavy-handed. And when the DM couldn't find a reason to prevent us from attacking, he started with the morality argument, saying that my lawful good paladin wouldn't argue for the destruction of 5,000 lives. But my counter-argument was, "Do I sense evil?" And he said, "Yes, lots of evil emanating from the ogres." Well then, there you go. I'll be doing God's work by destroying evil and saving an innocent life at the same time. The DM was pissed to say the least, but he was outnumbered by the will of the party, and we were going off script for him, and he had to go along for once. I'm sorry, is this the players against the DM? So everything worked out perfectly, and the party had a literal blast. The scorched earth of that chamber pretty much eradicated the entire species of ogre from the world. I rescued the damsel, and the wizards and the rogue had so much fun dropping napalm pebbles down on the ogres from a safe distance that everyone was ecstatic, except for the DM. Now, for our reward, the DM did some calculations, and he awarded the players with 580 experience. Wait, 580 experience each for 5,000 ogres? Yep, he said with a smug look on his face. We all stared at each other with our jaws dropped to the floor. Our feelings of heroic triumph immediately turned to ash, and quickly became feelings of resentment and betrayal. The DM said that it was an evil act, and that we committed genocide, and he was tempted to yank my paladin powers from me. Alright, so here's another issue. Killing evil creatures isn't necessarily an inherently evil act in of itself, but I can definitely agree with decreasing the experience from that 1 million down to a more reasonable number. I'm not saying that 500 is reasonable considering just how many died in all this, but assuming that these players were given that full 1 million and each player got about 300,000 each, assuming there's 4 players and they're splitting it evenly, they would go from level 8 to well into level 12. That would screw things up a pretty good deal. Now guys, if you're ever going to physically assault a DM, this is probably the only time that I would say it's okay to do so. But we didn't. What? We left that gaming session that night, and we tried once or twice more with the same DM because we had put a lot of work into our characters. But it was over. The campaign was dead. But on the lighter side, still to this day, whenever I run into one of the fellow players from college, they all greet me with, "Kill the ogres! as the first thing they say to me, and it always makes me laugh. And to add to this, I'm getting a lot of flack for different reasons. First, whether you think that the players or the DM was right or wrong, it really doesn't matter. It was a session that ended friendships and a 2-year campaign, which, in my view, is an RPG horror story. And, to add to this as well, this was 20 years ago, when my buddies and I were 18 and 19 years old. TSR's AD&D 2nd edition is also a lot different than 5e, 3.5, or Pathfinder. So, to address the 1.35 million experience, this was the total amount that was to be divided 5 ways if we were awarded it. Meaning, each of the players would receive about 270,000 experience, which still sounds like a lot. But in reality, we were all at about 90,000 experience by this point. My paladin was level 7, and the wizards and the rogue were level 8. A paladin in 2nd edition reaches level 7 at 75k, level 8 at 150k, and 9 at 300k. I was sitting at close to 90k, and it had taken me 2 years to get that far. So at most, I would have gone up 2 levels from this amount of experience. Did we as a party expect to get this full amount? No. We were expecting for him to at least acquiesce enough for us to go up a level. But 580 experience was just a slap in the face. It's like saying that we all got credit for killing 2 ogres each. Now, as far as Fireball goes, Fireball, as the wizards were casting them in this campaign, were 8d6 damage that filled an area of 33,000 cubic feet, meaning 33 10 by 10 by 10 squares. Your standard ogre is 10 feet tall in 2e, and takes up about 5 feet of horizontal space, and has anywhere between 17 to 33 HP, so that's 66 ogres if they are all packed together per fireball, getting hits for 8d6 damage. Now, it would still take at least 75 fireballs to accomplish this, and you're right to believe that 3 mages couldn't do this without some overpowered homebrew crap, which they had because they convinced our DM to let them have it. Bad on the DM for that one, frankly. I didn't know how it worked, as I was the tank, not the artillery for the party, and I wish I could tell you how it worked, and somehow fit into some kind of rule-like structure. But it was 20 years ago, and frankly, I'm surprised that I remember the names of the guys playing with me at the time, and I'm sure that the DM regretted letting them have it, because it caused a situation like this. So I hope that clears up some of the things, a little bit. And if you ever get the chance to play AD&D 2nd edition, please do. It's a fantastic system, and completely different from what you're used to if you've only played it since Wizards of the Coast bought D&D. Well guys, as per usual, a lot of the blame does actually go to the DM here. The DM shouldn't have ever even had a passing thought of allowing such a homebrew thing into the game. He obviously never thought about the potential what-if scenarios, and the potential outcomes of them, like the one in the story here. I also wonder how many other arbitrary decisions that he made that we aren't told about, considering that he's saying that he's thinking about the paladin losing his powers for killing evil creatures that were going to sacrifice an innocent civilian. But with all this being said as well though, the party is hardly innocent either. Quite frankly, I would mock this up to an everyone sucks scenario. Everyone is at fault for something here, and the game died because of it. But let me know what you guys think, and as always, have a good one.